Hello, my name is Norman Curtis. Today is February 28th, 2021. I chose to present on hypothyroidism syndrome, which is classified as an endocrine system disorder. It's described as abnormally low levels of thyroid hormone circulating in the body. And because the thyroid hormone plays a role in metabolism and affects so many different areas of the body, it can have a lot of different negative effects. Some signs and symptoms of hypothyroidism syndrome would include fatigue, poor memory or concentration, shortness of breath, weight gain, cool extremities, dry, coarse skin, delayed reflexes, and hair loss are just some of the many signs and symptoms. And as I said, it's an endocrine system disorder. Three other endocrine system disorders to discuss are Cushing syndrome, hypopituitarism syndrome, and hyperthyroidism syndrome. So how we differentiate these disorders is based on which hormone is affected and sometimes which gland is affected. So with Cushing syndrome, that is classified as a excess of cortisol hormone in the body. With hypopituitarism, this one's kind of different because the pituitary releases so many different hormones. But if only one hormone that is released from the pituitary is affected, we call that selective hypopituitarism. And if all hormones are affected, we call that panhypopituitarism. And as for hyperthyroidism syndrome, that's just the opposite of hypothyroidism. It's an excess of thyroid hormone in the body, which will basically cause the opposite effects of hypothyroidism. So instead of kind of slowing down metabolism everywhere, it will speed it up. As for three different diseases of hypothyroidism syndrome, one simple way to classify hypothyroidism diseases is by what their etiology is and kind of how the mechanism plays out. So if we remember the negative feedback system of the thyroid gland, we know that if thyroid levels are low, that will act on the hypothalamus and cause the release of TRH, or thyrotropin releasing hormone. Then the TRH will then travel through the circulation to the pituitary and cause release of TSH, or thyroid stimulating hormone. And then that TSH can then travel to the thyroid gland and stimulate release of thyroid hormone from the thyroid gland. So with classifying the hypothyroidism diseases, you can have primary, secondary, or tertiary. So if the cause of the low levels of thyroid is a dysfunction in the thyroid gland itself, we call that primary hypothyroidism. If it's caused by a defect in the pituitary or the release of TSH, we call that secondary hypothyroidism. And lastly, for tertiary, if it's caused by dysfunction of the hypothalamus or release of TRH, and we refer to that as tertiary hypothyroidism. So the three different diseases under that, I guess, umbrella of hypothyroidism are you can have primary, secondary, or tertiary, depending on which area is affected in the negative feedback mechanism. So primary is the thyroid gland itself, secondary is the pituitary, and tertiary would be the hypothalamus.